As many camps are going around the NFL, teams all having different ideas about what the new kickoff rules will be and how they will impact the NFL game. Some notes from around the league and make or break players in 2024 on this episode of Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love our everydayers, and we always love it when you hit that subscribe button. It helps us tremendously. When you subscribe on YouTube, notification bell, hit the thumbs up if you're enjoying yourself. And, of course, you can subscribe everywhere you are listening to this audio podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. I want to start with a note out of Kansas City, Matt.
Can't even wish me happy birthday. Come on, man.
I meant to start with that, and I totally forgot. Matt Williamson's birthday today. I can't believe we as a society are even working on a day in this such occasion. But Matt Williamson, happy birthday. As the school year ends, I love your story you told me about how when you were a kid, it was the last day of school was on your birthday. And that's a hell of a way to kick off summer.
It's also my children. They're not children anymore. They're teenagers. Last day of school. And that's what I was saying is the best birthday present ever growing up was if it happened to land on the last day of school, which probably did 5 times in my life. And my kids couldn't care one bit if it's my birthday. It's the last day of school. They're out and about. And it's like, teenagers flying around in their cars, just doing whatever, and beautiful summer day. But it's also the anniversary of D-Day. So, if you don't understand the importance of that in history, go look into it. It's one of the most amazing military feats of all time,
Oh yeah, man. The what was going on in the minds of the young men on the beach incredible. That day? It's pretty insane what those folks went through, and the anniversary of D-Day. You talk about special occasions happening on birthdays. My birthday's in January, and when I was a kid, and I was bummed when they started moving back the Super Bowl because my birthday used to be on the Super Bowl occasion. Yeah, and the last time it happened was sometime in the 90s, and there no more Super Bowls on my birthday anymore. But that was
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, you were 6 or 7 years old, and your birthday lands on the last day of school, man. That's a heck of a present.
Oh, no doubt. The Kansas City Chiefs, this is interesting. So obviously there's new kickoff rules, and we don't know how this is going to look. I think it's going to be really important in the preseason and finding out how some of these things are. And we've gotten insights now from multiple teams around the league and how some teams are treating it and how different special teams coaches are expecting it to be. Some coaches, Matt, I've heard are expecting big plays, and they have to take this seriously because this could be game changers if there's more opportunities for big returns and especially touchdown type returns with kickoffs now that weren't a factor before. So how you kick the ball, what the technique is there, what kind of returners you have on the field, what kind of players you have blocking, what kind of players you have trying to tackle the opposing team on the coverage units. A lot of this is going to be really important. And different teams have different ideas about how this is going to go. I want to start, though, with the actual kickers and how that is going to happen, because I think that's where it starts, and then you figure out the rest from there. And I want to start with 2 teams. I want to start with the Kansas City Chiefs, though. And, Harrison Butker has been in the news for other reasons, but Harrison Butker might not even be the one kicking off for the Kansas City Chiefs. This is from Chiefs beat writer Pete Sweeney, and he said the Chiefs are serious about having safety Justin Reed kick off, and they had non-kickers kick it. There was another player as well that was kicking off, non-kickers kicking off during practice, and special teams coordinator Dave Taub says that they watched the XFL preparing for these new rules, and they noticed that the kicker is involved in about 25 to 40% of tackles.
Wow.
They don't want their kicker involved in tackles in Harrison Butker. So what's funny is the role of kicker on these kickoffs, it might be more important with your ability to tackle than your ability to kick.
I think this is really fascinating. Go ahead. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Background, because Justin Reed actually can kick the heck out of the ball.
That's what I was going to say.
Like they're emergency kick, kicker, and I think he's kicked before in games, and has a great leg. So they wouldn't be losing a lot. It's different if you're trying to kick a field goal than if you're kicking off. But having an extra guy that can tackle might be really important for teams, and obviously that's a place for kickers to get hurt as well.
It's huge. I mean, I also think there's so many layers to this, because if your kicker gets hurt, I really believe there's like 25 good kickers in the league. And if you're one of those 7 teams, you're always recycling it, and you don't want Butker or Tucker or somebody like that going down, and then you become the 8th team looking for a kicker. Obviously, they're very important. Now, Reed's a great example, but I'm sure there's plenty of, quote, real NFL players that at least kicked in high school, have some experience. They were the best guy on a bad high school or whatever,
Yeah.
And they don't have to be accurate. They don't have to put it between the uprights. They only have to land it in a 20-yard area. I mean, they just got to hit the green. Now, ideally, you'd be able to really hit with a lot of loft, and land it in there, which I'm sure kickers would do much better than safeties or running backs or whatever. But still, the fact that high a percentage, the person kicking off gets involved in the tackle is alarming. And I know you have some insights on this through your team. I have a bunch through the Steelers I want to get into. But I think it's really, really clear that teams are not just brushing this rule change off as, we'll figure it out. Like, they're making big roster moves. They're making decisions on, our last edge rusher. Yeah, but he doesn't play special teams. Maybe we don't want him. Maybe we'll groom somebody else. And, I was at the owners' meetings, and an hour after this got passed, the Steelers signed Cordarrelle Patterson. That was a legit thing. He's the best kickoff returner ever, maybe. These people, this is changing the way teams are looking at things. And I want to hear your thoughts, but I also have some quotes I think are interesting.
Yeah. And what type of players you're going to, like, coverage units might look different. Yeah. The return
going to look a lot different.
You might throw 5 offensive linemen out. Are returns going to turn into basically a run play? Are you going to see run designs and plays? And do you want more of a running back style of player? Someone that's going to read it, find a hole, hit it, and have like more of a running back mentality with this, and maybe following blocks a little bit more, and almost like run plays with how they're blocking it up. Let
me cut you off there real quick, because that exactly leads to what I wanted to bring up, which I think is a really interesting perspective. Is at OTAs, Miles Killebrew is the Steelers special teams captain. He's their best special teamer. He's been to a Pro Bowl or 2 as a special teamer. That's how he makes a living, of course. But he came in the league as a safety and as a 2nd or 3rd level player. And some beat reporters were asking him, what do you think of covering these new kickoffs? And as a coverage player on them, he said, it reminds me so much of like a expanded version of an outside zone run. I mean, and it's really how it's going to look. I mean, from his perspective, it's almost like being a deep middle set, safety defending outside zone. You're going to see it all break down and work out, and you're going to have to time it perfectly and attack the right gap. And to your point, I think you're going to see a lot of big, heavy tight ends, a lot of edge defenders, defensive linemen that can run, 290-pound centers, that could be involved on kickoff and kickoff return.
So if you have more big people blocking, then you might need more big people defending.
Yeah.
And, because if you have a bunch of safeties on the field,
they're going to get mashed.
Will they get blown out of there by offensive linemen? Will the offensive linemen be too slow in that much space? Because you're not.
I think tight ends are going to be key.
Yeah. So more sort of tight ends and
linebacker fullback type, like Juszczyk might be out there,
Right.
Edge defenders, or
but if you're bigger on the coverage units, are you going to be slower on the coverage units? And you probably are. Does that allow for more big plays because there's more space and more bigger runs?
That's what I was thinking. Is if you can break past the first line as a returner, now I got a lot of space with 3 guys chasing me. I think there's going to be a lot of big runs.
Yeah. And so this could go a lot of different directions. I've got more notes on this. And I think that I have somewhat of an idea how things are going to go. But, man, this could go a lot of different ways. And there's a couple of key differences between the XFL return and the NFL rules and some things they didn't adopt that I want to get to next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. And sometimes we all need just to talk things out, whether you are feeling authentically upset or even there's something really exciting in your life, big life events that are happening, sometimes good, sometimes really bad that you have to figure out, right? And sometimes we just don't need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. And those can linger. And it's important to get that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. It's so important not to let the small thing become the big thing in the first place. And that's where therapy comes in. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be flexible and suited to fit your schedule. And therapy can be different for everyone. So that's so important that it is fit for how you need it in your life. So visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. So one of the things that has happened in 49ers camp that I find interesting is, and going back to the kicker thing, is how the ball is being kicked. And the 49ers are practicing kicking the ball funky, spinning it around, making it hard to catch, hard to pick up off the ground. And I don't think this is necessarily like a squib where you're trying to make the returner fumble it so you can go recover it necessarily. That could be
still needs to land in that zone.
Yeah, so you have to land it in the zone. But as long as you land it in the zone, if it's funky, you just create more time for your team, less time for the other team, and it disrupts the timing of a play, especially if you're trying to run a run play in an outside zone. A lot of it's based on timing. You need things to work out. But a rule in the XFL returns that the NFL did not adopt is in the XFL, there's a 3-second rule. It's sort of like when you drop food on the ground, 3 seconds to pick it back up.
That's fine.
It's fine. You get 3 seconds to go. Like they can't go get you yet.
So they
3 seconds.
They like blow a whistle after 3 seconds, then you can start running.
I didn't watch enough XFL, and I'm gonna have to go back and watch XFL now too, just to get a little bit more idea of how this might look. But it's going to be a little different in a couple of ways from the XFL in the NFL because they didn't adopt all the rules and they moved the yardage around a little bit as well, and the penalties of not kicking it in certain places. And that's still a possibility. Maybe teams find out, whatever, we're kicking it through the end zone. They don't care. So that and then it's all moot, right? And none of it matters if that ends up being the case. If there's too many big returns and not worried about it, like what's 5 more yards? Who cares? We're going to kick it out of the end zone. But in the XFL, you have time to go pick up that ball, and then the play starts. So it's not accurate. But in the NFL, that extra time is important because once if the returner's fumbling around, they're off and they're after you. And so the 49ers are practicing making it hard for the returner to catch the ball cleanly and run it. Okay.
So my initial thoughts on that are, so anyone's been to an NFL practice, the kickers and long snappers 99% of the time are off on their own field doing their own thing. And frankly, they're bored a lot. You can only do the long snap, hold, kick, enough. You don't need 2 hours a day of doing that.
The special
talking about
guys always really good at playing cards, or there's always the punter that knows magic tricks, or they're really good golfers or something like
golfers.
Yeah.
So in their free time, kickers will do weird things like try new onside kicks. And for people who don't know, punting has come very, very far in a short amount of time. I mean, these guys just don't either coffin kick it or kick it high or kick it as far as they can. They knuckle it. They a lot of the Australian influence. So I wonder, we have to kick this thing off a tee. it'd be cool if you could punt it because there's so many more pitches you could throw. You could knuckle curve it and knuckleball it and slider and, but off a tee, I'm sure good kickers, not the Justin Reeds of the world, might be able to do funky, this thing really floats or knuckles or, you know what I mean? Like weird pitches.
Absolutely. And again, with the 49ers, it might be Mitch Wishnowsky, who's the, Aussie rules footballer, right?
Yeah.
So, he can
He might be a better tackler too.
He can run the ball. He's a bigger guy. He's practiced those funky punts, and he's a really good punter as well, and getting the ball to move in a certain way. Whereas kickers are like, let's just kick it straight and know how to do this one thing really well.
And punters are better athletes than kickers too. They do athletic stuff as a rule of thumb. Yeah.
And usually bigger guys.
And bigger. Yeah.
And just as far as punting goes, Pat McAfee talks about this. He said in his day, you kick the hell out of it as high and as far as you can. Hang time, just kick the crap out of it. That was the only goal of a punter. And now the guys are really working on spin, how it deadens, how it hits the ground inside the 5 and it doesn't roll forward in the end zone. And so, this could go. The bottom line is this could go a million different ways. It could end up being not a factor at all. It could end up changing the entire sport to the point where they're like, we can't have it like this after this 1 year because it's making too big of a difference in games because we're having returns all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, like, boy, I had this team right where I want them. I'd kick it out of the end zone, and we did have to sustain a long drive. And before you know it, they had 3 kicks that accounted for 150 of field position yards, including a score. It's like, wow, we're in trouble.
Yeah, and so like a team like Kansas City or another team might think, okay, we want an extra safety on the field, so we're gonna have this guy who can kick far. He's gonna be our kickoff guy, and he goes out there and just shanks the heck out of it the first time.
Right.
More. All right, we got to go back to the kicker, and then the kicker is going to miss a tackle later in the game, and this could go any number of ways. You mentioned Cordero Patterson though.
Real quick, maybe they put Reed out there only when they're winning by 10 or more, because if he screws it up, like
he's the closer, right?
He's the closer. You
just can't let the touchdown happen. So you need an extra guy. Back.
Maybe I'm just thinking different. I mean, that all these guys are having these conversations right now. Well, when do we use this? Or and a head coach is, when are you going to convince your head coach to do that? Like,
it's like,
I'm not doing that.
Coach, we got to spend 10 more minutes of practice. This limited practice time we have on special teams now. The coach is not going to like that at all.
And that's going to happen across the league, and that's going to be a huge aspect of this. I mean, because they do not want to allocate extra time to special teams.
As far as what type of return man is going to be good at it, I think Cordero Patterson's exactly the guy.
Yeah,
that hybrid player who's got top speed, because I think top speed's going to be important to be able to hit those big plays, but has like running back vision and that can hit that hole and just then go, right?
Maybe a little patience.
Right. So the fast running back is kind of what I'm eyeballing as the guy who's going to be a big time returner in this new system. But we'll see.
Much more than the punt returner type. Even if the ball does hang in the air a long time and you're waiting for it, looking into the lights, I still think you're going to have to break arm tackles or be a build-up speed.
Break an arm tackle has the vision, but then still has the top speed. Once they do hit it and get in the open field, can break it.
And run over a kicker, of course.
Yeah, run over a kicker if he's there, or run away from an extra bigger linebacker, maybe.
Last note, unless you have more, but I do think, I bring it back to the Steelers. Like, do you remember Brett Kiesel? He developed into a 3-4 defensive end.
Yeah.
But as a rookie, he ran down on kickoffs because he was fast and he was 270 pounds. He wasn't 295 yet. Like, those guys are going to be gold. Like the tweener, who's Robinson, Darius Robinson. Have him running down on kickoffs.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome.
Those young players, those guys who are like young edge rushers that are still need to hit the NFL weight room and get big enough to play the run consistently, but that came in and can fly, and those.
I'm not talking about Vince Wilfork. I'm talking about,
right. Like Nolan Smith for the Eagles, right?
So he'd be
an edge guy that could fly down
blow up a tight end block, or even take on a tackle or whatever they throw at you. Yep, that's interesting stuff.
All right, it's gonna be fun. Don't know, no idea how this is gonna go, but there's a lot of different ways it could go. Which we're talking about it. I'm more excited to watch a kickoff now than I ever have in my entire life. So
and I don't know if the preseason will tell us much. Like, all these special teams coaches, one of those reps are so valuable. but I'm not putting out my best plays on special teams because no one's ever seen my tape before.
And it's funny because each coach, and I've heard a lot of different interviews, and like some coaches are probably getting ideas from other coaches and what they're already doing in OTAs, because like the whole like kicking it, making it difficult to catch a kick. I never would have thought of that, but probably some other teams didn't either. And like, oh, wait a second. Niners are doing this over here. The Chiefs aren't even using a kicker to kick off. Having an extra guy tackle is probably pretty important too. So we'll see how it all comes.
And we're just doing our normal stuff. We're behind the times.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you remember, 32 special teams coach got together and proposed this, and then it went through pretty easily. Doesn't mean all of them agreed. And it doesn't mean they're all comparing notes on how they're going to handle it either.
And the XFL didn't have like a ridiculous amount of returns either, right? Like it's not like
I have no idea.
I don't remember that being a huge factor in the XFL, but I guess I'm gonna have to go back to school on that. Next,
to your point, though, I don't want Cordell Patterson to be worth more than Pat Mahomes.
Yes, right.
You know what I mean? I don't want the game to change that drastically, you know.
Who are the make or break players in the 2024 NFL season and next? This episode of P&W is sponsored by Game Time. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier than ever before, and it was already really fast and easy at Game Time because prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. We're talking killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and Game Time's lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets, NHL tickets, Major League Baseball tickets, NFL tickets. I know you all have circled games on the NFL schedule release calendar that you want to go to this fall. And of course, any concerts, comedy shows, theater events near you, all of those tickets you can find at Game Time. Save up to 60% off buying those last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, and comedy, by the way, at Game Time. Views from your seat, all in prices, so you're not surprised with those fees at checkout. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. NFL.com article on make or break players sparked this thought from us, Matt. And you guys can find it at NFL.com. Nick Shook is the author of this particular article. And he talks about some players that have make or break seasons in the NFL. And, you know, the biggest make or break guys are obviously the ones that are going to be going into contract years. And number one on the list here is T. Higgins. And this is a huge one for T. Higgins because the way that money is going with wide receivers in the NFL, this is a guy who, maybe if he's injured, if he has a down year, maybe he has to have a prove it contract with a team, maybe he ends up figuring something out with the Bengals. But if he goes off, I mean, he might be a $30 million per year guy next year. This could go a lot of ways for T. Higgins. Huge year for him on the franchise tag in 2024.
Yes. So I've done lists, and this time of year is not easy to put content out. And Nick Shook is who wrote this for NFL.com. I just would have probably taken a different angle than talking about a lot of guys with contracts up, because I'm not fighting you, BP, but let's say Higgins has the exact same year he had last year, which is injury-ridden and not himself, and we all knew that, and then he hits free agency. He's still going to do really well. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's make or break, and if he tears the league up, maybe he gets not Justin Jefferson money, but maybe he gets Nico Collins money. But either way, T. Higgins is going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I wanted to bring this article up, because I think, first of all, the league is not for long. And every year is make or break for every player. I mean, it truly is. I mean, and maybe not if you're Mahomes or Aaron Donald or, those type of guys. But, like, I would have, like, the Bryce Youngs of the world on this list more than the guys whose contracts are
up. Number 2 on the list is Tua. And
yeah.
I think it's already going to be figured out. One of the reasons
I do too.
Is because he admitted feeling antsy about his ongoing contract talks. I think the contract will be done.
I think that happens soon.
I think Anthony Richardson, to your point, Bryce Young, way more make or break years for those guys because their careers go a completely different trajectory if they haven't figured something out after 2 seasons in the NFL. Yes. I mean, things happen quickly and people will no longer believe in you after 2 years if you haven't shown anything, even if you're supposed to be a guy who's like, oh, we might wait 2 or 3 years. It sounds great on draft night. In reality, 2 or 3 years is an eternity in the NFL.
Yep. And there's a name on here I'll wait till we get to that really brings that conversation around. So I'm going to be quiet on that for a minute here, because
do you feel like Dak's number 3 on this list? Do you feel it's the same for Dak as it is for T. Higgins, where it's like he's going to make a lot of money, so it's not that big of a deal?
He's going to become a free agent if he wants, and even if he's one of the worst quarterbacks in the league this year, he's going to have shooters, and I don't think he's going to be one of the worst quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah,
he'll be just fine. Like, I don't feel for Dak Prescott. Like,
oh man,
you know what I mean?
He only got $55 million a year.
Right. I mean, this next guy is the definition, but then there's some other guys I want to kind of talk about too. Number 4. So
Deshaun Watson's number 4. A lot of quarterbacks on this list.
Sure.
He's got guaranteed money. It doesn't matter. He can go. He can
right.
He can pack it in the rest of his career, and then once his contract's over, go live it up on a beach. He doesn't have to do anything. And I wonder if motivation is a factor here.
I wonder if motivation's been a factor since he got in trouble, frankly. But I mean, that's me not giving him the benefit of the doubt, but he's not going to get many benefits of the doubt from anyone out there. And you're right. He could go live on a beach. He could pack it in. He could Johnny Manziel it and not care one bit. But in terms of his legacy and being a teammate and being an upstanding player, I look at Watson and like a Russell Wilson as, how are you going to be remembered? You know?
It's a huge year for both of the quarterbacks with the Pittsburgh Steelers, for sure.
No doubt.
They both become either long-term starters, either in Pittsburgh or somewhere else, if they have really good seasons. Because I think there's enough belief that they could be good starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And we always talk about it. It seems like there's 32 of them every year, and at the end of the year, there's not 32 of them anymore that you believe in. They could both just become journeymen the rest of their careers. So huge for them. And I think Daniel Jones, who's number 5 on this, should be higher, because this is a huge year for him. And I've already kind of given up on him, but I think that a lot of people around the league maybe haven't.
That's the guy I was biting my tongue on, because I think it's a perfect example. And Bryce Young isn't far from this. We saw it happen to Pickett, Ritter, Howe, Mac Jones, that before you know it, Daniel Jones and Bryce Young, you could be Sam Darnold. You could be Mitch Trubisky. You could be Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Carson Wentz. The list goes on and on and on, where, you're in the league, but no one's counting on you. You know what I mean? Like, that's where Mayfield was a year ago. Mayfield stepped up and became one of the 32. Can Daniel Jones do that? Can Bryce Young do that?
It was a big make or break year for Baker Mayfield last year, and he maked and didn't break. And
exactly.
So that was a pretty important thing for him. And you'll still get an opportunity. Like we see it with Sam Darnold, you'll still get an opportunity, but
you'll be employed.
You might get a chance as a stopgap to start a couple weeks before that rookie comes in and takes your job. Like that might be the most someone allows you to start a game as planned to begin a year.
Yeah, and that could be Daniel. Maybe I know you and I aren't huge Daniel Jones supporters, and I'm not a huge Bryce Young supporter, but they could have good years, and their team could back them at least for another year, or they could be the team that hold down the fort, and we're going to draft a guy in the top 10. You know,
right?
It happens that fast.
Chase Young is on this list. And I thought his make or break year was maybe last year as well.
I was thinking that too.
I think the word is out on Chase Young. There's clearly something that is, speaking of, motivation, I think it's a big thing. He should be a lot better than he is. I don't think teams will expect Chase Young to be a dude, even if he has a really good year. I don't think anybody's going to give him the long-term money.
His career really, really, really is starting to resemble Jadeveon Clowney's.
Mm-hmm.
He was a mercenary year after year. The team that drafted him stuck with him kinda, and then moved on. Then he's on a new team every other year, and his highlights are fine, but he's never close to a dominant player.
It goes on those stretches where he's a monster for a while, then checks out for a while again, and that's exactly the path that Chase Young's on right now. Yeah. He's only 25 years old, and he might play another 10 years. Might be for 10 different teams on 1-year contracts.
Yeah, and those guys are the ones that get signed like this time of year. You go into mini camp and it's like, we drafted this edge guy, but he's not ready. Let's go sign Justin Houston or Jadeveon Clowney for a 1-year deal and live with it. And that's, it's fine. I mean, you'll you'll retire a multi-bazillionaire, but it's, mercenary work.
We don't have to go through this whole list. You go to NFL.com to find it. But there's a name on here that you know about. Najee Harris comes in number 7, running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It feels like he's already been leapfrogged as the starter there, or as the main back by Jaylen Warren. Talk to me about Najee Harris. What is to be expected of him, and was his make or break in the past?
Yeah, I don't know that I'd have him on here, because I think no matter what, even if he walks from Pittsburgh after the year, he'll be in a committee somewhere. He's one of the best 40 backs in the league. I think when it comes down to the 5th-year option, I think the Steelers looked at it like this. Like, I don't want to put the 5th-year guaranteed option on a running back and hope the next 17 games when I run him into the ground, he doesn't suffer a terrible injury, and then I'm on the hook for the 5th year. Like, to be honest, I could see them adding a year to his contract like this summer and just don't make it guaranteed.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not that they hate him. I don't think they love him. I don't think they hate him. It's just,
like he's a guy. He's solid, but he's not a dynamic running back they probably hoped they were getting in the first round.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is why, Matt, you don't draft running backs in the first round. Quinton,
that's the last name I want to bring up
on the list. Los Angeles Chargers wide receiver. Huge year for him. But people are already like, I don't know if I've ever even seen it this quickly with a wide receiver, first round wide receiver. Everyone liked him. Nobody was like, oh my God, I can't believe the Chargers drafted Quinton Johnston in the first round, right? And bad rookie year, and everyone's like, well, he's garbage, like I don't know if I've ever seen it that fast where people already think that they know what Quinton Johnston is, and maybe they're right, and it was not a good rookie season. But as a wide receiver, a lot of receivers aren't great as rookies. Year 2, year 3 are usually really big years, and we're seeing more and more make or breaks are probably year 2 seasons for a lot of guys, because your career can go a very different direction if you're not good by if you haven't shown enough by the end of your second year in the NFL.
Yeah, and I wanted to lump Jonathan Mingo in with him, because like 1 year ago, we're drafting these guys high in our rookie dynasty drafts, and they're top 50-ish picks, and another great receiver class. And, but Mingo and Johnston are kind of big, strong, fast, raw players. Well, they both had awful seasons, but when a raw project isn't great right away, didn't we kind of know that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was the Trey Lance thing always blows my mind. It's like, okay, this is the guy that is a unique prospect that's played the least amount of football that we've ever seen at a high level, and he's going to need some time. And so what did you do? You didn't give him any time.
So don't give him any time, right? Like, let's go back to the scouting report here, right? But that happens a lot.
Right. Yep. Young players, make or breaks. It's like it would to me, and I think you're right about this, and this was your thought at the top. A make or break list probably looks a lot like a projected breakout list for players that didn't have good rookie seasons. Yeah.
And like the Chase Young conversation is a good one too. Like, you just going to go down as, an afterthought, or could you get back to being a dude,
So what we should do next week, Matt, is make our own breakout list. The players to watch in 2024.
I like it.
All that and a whole lot more. Got you covered for the entire NFL every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you've subscribed like all the everydayers are on YouTube and everywhere you listen to this podcast. Matt and I back next time right here. Peacock and Williamson.